Historians rely on different types of sources. Some are archaeological, such as ruins, bones, and pottery. Others are material culture, meaning what people made, wore, or traded. But one of our most valuable categories is the primary source. Now, this could be a document, artifact, or image created during the time under study. Think of letters, speeches, court records, or even a tax receipt. These primary sources give us the closest possible window into past worlds, but they don't speak for themselves. They must be interpreted with attention to context, bias, authorship, and purpose. Now, when we study the Americas before and during the early colonial period, historical research becomes difficult. Many indigenous civilizations, from the Maya to the Inca to the Mexica or Aztec, relied heavily on oral tradition. The Maya had writing systems, but many documents were destroyed after European contact. Spanish colonizers often burned indigenous books, outlawed native religions, and replaced traditional schools with European-style religious instruction. So this cultural rupture makes it hard to recover indigenous perspectives. We lack full libraries of Nahua philosophy or Mixtec poetry. But in rare cases, we find sources that survive the conquest. Texts produced in that liminal space where indigenous memory met European paper. Now, one of the most remarkable of these is the Florentine Codex. Compiled between the 1540s and 1570s, the Florentine Codex is a 12-volume encyclopedic manuscript created by Bernardino de Sahagún, a Franciscan friar, and a team of indigenous Nahua scholars, scribes, and artists. Sahagún, who arrived in New Spain in 1529, learned Nahuatl and began documenting indigenous religion, language, and culture. Now, his goal was not only to preserve knowledge, but to better combat what he viewed as idolatry. So the codex includes 2 columns of text on nearly every page, one in Nahuatl and the other in Spanish. It also features more than 2,000 illustrations drawn by indigenous artists trained in European techniques. And these visuals depict rituals, gods, dress, flora, fauna, warfare, and scenes of everyday life. So the result is a hybrid document, part missionary ethnography, part indigenous testimony. And it's called the Florentine Codex because the best preserved manuscript was sent to Europe and now resides in a library in Florence, Italy. Like the Dresden and Vatican codices, it's named where it ended up, not where it was made. Take a look at this dramatic image, a heart held aloft on a temple. It's gruesome, sure, but it's also sacred. Now, the Spanish might have seen this as a scene of demonic violence, but Nahua artists depicted it with dignity and order. Priests in ceremonial dress, the temple steps, the offering to the gods. This is more than a spectacle. It is cosmology in action. The Florentine Codex is a primary source, a first-hand document from the 16th century, but it's also a product of power and negotiation. It was created in a colonial missionary setting under European authority, yet it still preserves indigenous perspectives, memories, and cosmologies. To analyze the Codex, we can use 5 guiding questions. First, who created it? and in what context? Sahagún initiated the project, but Nahua scholars were crucial co-authors. They interviewed elders, collected oral traditions, wrote texts, and created images. They were not just passive informants, they were intellectual collaborators working in the aftermath of the conquest, trying to preserve their culture while navigating Christian censorship. Second, who was the intended audience? Well, primarily Spanish authorities, both ecclesiastical and royal. Sahagún hoped the codex would be a tool for understanding and converting indigenous peoples. But by including Nahuatl and richly detailing cultural context, the codex also speaks to future indigenous readers and unintentionally to modern scholars. Third, what perspectives are included and which are missing? We get the worldview of Nahua elite males, priests, sages, and nobles. These are the educated classes who worked with Sahagún. Now, what's largely missing are the voices of women, peasants, dissenters, or those who converted to Christianity and changed their worldview. Now, the Codex doesn't give us a complete cross-section of society, but it gives us valuable fragments we wouldn't otherwise have. Fourth, what do the visual elements reveal? Images are crucial. They often depict scenes differently from the text. For example, while the Spanish commentary may describe a ritual as demonic, the Nahua image might show solemnity and sacred order. Take the scene of human sacrifice. Blood is present, yes, but so is the ritual choreography, elaborate dress, and a sense of cosmic importance. Fifth, how does the Codex reflect both preservation and distortion? The Codex is a paradox. It preserves a massive amount of Nahua cultural knowledge, plants, diseases, deities, rituals, myths, and more. But it also filters that knowledge through a Christian moral lens. Now, some Nahuatl passages contradict the Spanish text. Some images complicate or resist the narrative. As readers, we have to hold both truths. This is a colonial document and a cultural archive. The Codex is divided into 12 books. Each book offers insight into a different aspect of Nahua life. For example, Book 2 explains the ceremonial calendar and the logic behind offerings. Book 11 functions as an ethnobotanical guide describing plants used in medicine, cooking, and spiritual practice. Book 12 presents the conquest from the Nahua perspective, offering a mournful, vivid account of Moctezuma, Cortez, and the fall of Tenochtitlan. It's not just a chronicle, it's a cultural trauma etched onto a page. The Florentine Codex is not perfect. It's not free of the colonial gaze. Now, the term colonial gaze refers to the way colonizers viewed and represented indigenous people through a lens shaped by power, prejudice, and European assumption. In the Codex, this often shows up in how rituals are described in Spanish as barbaric or idolatrous. Even when the Nahuatl text or the images show a sacred and structured worldview. So it's a reminder that even detailed documentation can distort what it records, depending on who's holding the pen or the brush. But it is one of the most detailed, layered, and revealing documents we have from the early colonial period. It gives us not just facts, but ways of seeing both Spanish and Indigenous. It teaches students of history how to read between the lines, to recognize power, perspective, and resistance in a single manuscript. And it reminds us that even under conquest, cultures fight to remember, to adapt, and to speak. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and as always, stay curious.